Hey there, my name is James Lee. Welcome to another segment of 5149 on Breaking Points. Today, I want to take a moment to reflect about why all of our major institutions are in shambles. To help set the stage for today's conversation, let's examine a recent Gallup poll measuring Americans' confidence in major U.S. institutions from 2021 to 2022. Taking a look at this graphic, the only two institutions with a majority of respondents answering a great deal or quite a lot of confidence are small businesses and the military. Everything else is underwater. The medical system, 38% confidence. Big tech, 26%. The Supreme Court, 25%. A big drop there, no surprise based on recent events. The presidency, 23%. TV news, 11%. Congress, 7%. Wow. Now, today I want to explore one of the reasons why I think this is the case. Institutions have shown signs of decay for decades, and I don't mean to keep relitigating the topic of COVID-19, but I do think the coronavirus pandemic really stressed our institutions to the breaking point. The analogy I like to use is that it's kind of like a piece of metal that's been damaged, a support beam or something like that, that's been fatiguing for years and years, and finally it buckles under a prolonged trauma. I'll give you a specific example. Last month, former COVID-19 coordinator Dr. Deborah Birx appeared before a select subcommittee on the coronavirus crisis to testify on former President Donald Trump's response to the pandemic, and she said something pretty revealing.
When the government told us that the vaccinated couldn't transmit it, was that a lie or was that a guess?
I think it was hope that the vaccine would work in that way. And that's why I think scientists and public health leaders always have to be at the table, being very clear what we know and what we don't know.
This is important for the country to know. So when I asked the question, when the government told us that the vaccinated couldn't get it, and I asked you if it was a guess or a lie, you said you don't know. You said you think it was hope. So what we do know is it wasn't the truth. So they were either guessing, lying, or hoping, and communicating that information to the citizens of this country.
We knew early on in January of 2021 and late December of 2020 that reinfection was occurring after natural infection. Once you see that, and I want to make it clear to you all and to anyone that is listening, this is not measles, mumps, and rubella. Those vaccines produce long-term immunity and can create herd immunity.
So I just want to interrupt for a second, Dr. Birx. You said something important. You said in early 2021, January 2021, you knew that people who had been vaccinated could be reinfected.
All I know is there was evidence from the global pandemic that natural reinfection was occurring. And since the vaccine was based on natural immunity, you cannot make the conclusion that the vaccine will do better than natural infection.
So I'll come back to the hope versus a guess versus a lie issue in just a second. But the fact is, although they knew that COVID-19 reinfection was occurring even before the mass rollout of the vaccine, that's obviously not the information they chose to convey to the American public. And here are a couple of clips from President Biden and Dr. Fauci to remind you of the messaging they chose instead throughout much of 2021.
So this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated, not the vaccinated, the unvaccinated. That's the problem. And so everybody talks about freedom and not to have a shot or have a test. Well, guess what? So how about patriotism? How about making sure that you're vaccinated so you do not spread the disease to anybody else?
The fact is, this is one of the encouraging aspects about the efficacy of the vaccine. It'll either protect you completely against infection. If you do get infected, the chances are that you're going to be without symptoms, and the chances are very likely that you'll not be able to transmit it to other people.
Pandemic of the unvaccinated. If you're vaccinated, you won't transmit the virus. These are all things we were told by our government and the legacy media throughout all of 2021. And yes, I understand that the official guidance and establishment sanctioned narrative have since changed, maybe because it became impossible to deny that vaccines cannot stop the spread of COVID-19. But what Dr. Birx's testimony confirmed was that the official guidance was not based on any kind of science. It was not necessarily even new information that resulted in a shift of the official guidance and narrative. It was actually information they knew all along but chose to suppress. For what reason? Was it hope, a guess, a deliberate lie? We don't really know. And to me, it doesn't necessarily even matter, because that's only half of the story here in terms of why Americans have no confidence in any of our major institutions. Quoting a Reuters article from July of last year, Facebook is not doing enough to stop the spread of false claims about COVID-19 and vaccines, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said at the time, part of a new administration pushback on misinformation in the United States. Now, I know that big tech platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Google are all independent theoretically, and the White House obviously can't enforce certain censorship policies onto these companies, but it's hard not to argue that the Biden administration is closely tied to a lot of these social media companies. Taking a look at Facebook's content guidelines, quote, under our community standards, we remove misinformation during public health emergencies when public health authorities conclude that the information is false. Twitter, their misinformation policy states that the platform will flag, quote, false or misleading information that misrepresent the protective effect of vaccines and to make claims contrary to health authorities. YouTube's vaccine misinformation policy states that they will remove videos that, quote, contradicts local health authorities or the WHO's guidance on vaccine safety, efficacy, and ingredients. I just want to point out the common thread, which is when public health authorities conclude the information is false or claims contrary to health authorities, videos that contradict health authorities' guidelines. So basically, none of the most popular social media platforms allowed for conversations, discussions, or opinions about vaccines that contradicted or deviated from whatever guidance that was explicitly endorsed by public health authorities. They were essentially given carte blanche over deciding what is and what isn't misinformation. If they concluded the information to be false, then it must be false. Never mind Dr. Fauci's many quote-unquote noble lies in the past 2 years about mask wearing, what constitutes herd immunity, and whether or not the US funded gain-of-function research in China. I understand that this is a sensitive issue and that there were a lot of people making nefarious claims about COVID-19 and the vaccine, and I do think that social media certainly makes things worse in those cases by amplifying their voices. But I also think that there were a lot of other people searching for the truth so they can make an educated decision. And in the past, social media has democratized the distribution of media or information that would have otherwise been unavailable. But this time around, we weren't allowed to have that discussion on public forums, which I think could actually have the unintended consequence of further weakening our already ailing institutions. NYU professor Jonathan Haidt spoke to this point in a recent interview with Radio New Zealand, saying, quote, when critics go silent, the institution gets stupid. Now, Haidt, he's founded an organization called the Heterodox Academy, which aims to foster free institutional debate. He continues by saying that, quote, we're scientists and social scientists, and we know how hard it is to find the truth. When you have a bunch of people with PhDs and expertise in an area trying to study something, especially complex social policy, half the time we're going to get it wrong, and it's really hard to find the truth. And if people are afraid of dissent, then you're guaranteed to not find it, and you're going to be wrong about almost everything. Now, this ethos is specifically aimed towards debates within academia, but I think it rings true for institutions throughout American life. My takeaway is that our institutions are struggling not because of nefarious online actors, Russian bots, and the like seeking to cause chaos, although admittedly those situations definitely do exist, but rather I think our institutions are rotting from the inside out because of a pattern of deliberate decisions made to obfuscate the truth from the public and then suppressing discussion for the sake of maintaining control over the narrative. The reason why this is so damaging is because when the public inevitably finds out the truth, this type of repeated behavior conditions us to question the very institutions, the government, the media, the public health system, etc., the institutions that are fundamental to maintaining our democracy and holding our country together. The problem, that I've laid out here today with regards to COVID began actually much earlier, going all the way back to Vietnam. the Pentagon Papers probably seem like ancient history at this point, but they do reveal deep institutional lies that were designed not only to deceive the American public, but also control media narratives. Then when you have events like Watergate, Iran-Contra, the 2000 election, Iraq WMDs, the 2008 recession, along with so many promises being broken along the way, I think distrust then becomes the norm. And besides these defining institutional scandals of the past, there are also quieter reasons why distrust has collapsed. I think on a daily level, the corruption, the fraud, coercion, deception, and stagnation within U.S. institutions prevents them from upholding their bargain with the American people. In societies dictated by social contracts between institutions formed to write the rules and run society, legitimacy stems from those institutions delivering when asked to function for the American people. When those social contracts break down across politics, economics, culture, media, etc., distrust comes pretty naturally from there. I think the example from the COVID-19 pandemic that we discussed today was just a glaring example that removed any and all doubts. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion about the unfortunate state of our crumbling institutions and found it to be helpful. If you want more videos like this, please check out my channel, 5149 with James Lee, where I release weekly videos relating to the intersection of business, politics, and society. The link will be in the description below. And of course, subscribe to Breaking Points. And thank you so much for your time today.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.